I went into my doctor, dermatologist, 2009, and I was expecting my usual routine. They go in there and they freeze the cancer on my nose, or they cut and scrape, or take care of the cancer on my ears. I've had some major cancer problems since 1979, and getting ongoing treatment. I've missed many months of work. It's gotten so bad, but I thought I had it under control because I was going every 6 months and getting it removed. And so I go in there, and the doctor looks at it and says, "I'm sending you to a specialist because I can't handle this anymore. The nose looks like we're going to have to do some major stuff here." I said, "Okay." So I get a notice to go see another doctor, and they sent me to a eye doctor, plastic surgeon, deals with eye and the face and all that stuff, reconstruction. And I thought that was kind of odd. But I go to the guy, and I was expecting him to say, "Okay, we're going to do this, that." But I sit down in the chair, and he says, "All right, let me take a look." And no introduction, who you are, what you are, no interest in me as a human being. He was just all business. So I sit down there, and he takes a look at it. And next thing you know, he's got this big needle, and he gives me a shot right behind the eyeball. And he's popping it, and he's looking in there, and he's doing all kinds of stuff. And he's just telling me, matter of factly, he says, "Well, this skin cancer may be behind the eyeball, may have to cut the eyeball out, may have to cut the entire nose off, may have to cut your eyelid off. You're lucky if you have a tear duct, and I'm probably going to have to take a couple big chunks out of your ears to help rebuild this and give it a little meat because you'll need to rebuild this nose from nothing." And he says, "Then I'm going to cut this triangle on your forehead, come on down, and then I'll fold that skin and let it grow over the nose. And then eventually when that's connected, we'll cut that and we'll do 2 or 3 more plastic surgeries to even that out." And I'm sitting there going, what? I'm not afraid of pain, and I'm not afraid of needles or getting cut and anything, but it was my vanity. I'm picturing myself looking like a Frankenstein monster for months while all this plastic surgery is going on. And then the idea of possibly losing an eyeball. And then he says, "Oh, and you got cancer on your lips. May have to amputate, cut off a big chunk of your lips, eyelids, nose, parts of the ear, and then we're going to be cutting and harvesting flesh and stuff from your forehead." And I'm just thinking, my God, that's... And then he just left me there. And just, "Okay, end of story. We'll send you out a notice." So I stagger out, and I mean that stagger out because emotionally I was like, wow, I was spent. So I kind of staggered out to my pickup truck in the parking lot, and I sat there. And I have to admit, for about 90 minutes, I was actually kind of down. It got to me, and it was really my vanity. And then I made a call to my nurse friend Karen. She kind of told me what to do and everything else, the procedure I've been going through. And okay, so I had some facts. Said a prayer to my guru, and took a deep breath and made up my mind, well, whatever it is, I'm going to embrace it. And whatever it is, I will learn a lesson from it. And if I look uglier in hell, then hey, it is what it is. And then I remember this movie, Cat Ballou, with Jane Fonda many years ago. When I was younger, I saw where the bad guy, Lee Marvin, has this metal chrome-like silver plate on his nose, and he wears it. And I thought, well, I could always do something like that, or wear a mask like on the opera, or the Phantom of the Opera. So I was trying to pep myself up and be able to handle whatever happened. Because I always tell everybody, face your karma, embrace it. Face your pain, deal with it. Don't run from it. Don't give in to your fear. So I decided to totally turn this over to God. And whatever was, it was okay. Whatever was supposed to happen was okay. And whatever I'd go through, I'd have that as a lesson to help others as well. So I was going to be an example, and I wanted to be a good example. So I went home, and a few days later, I go into this surgeon, and it's one of those processes where they keep cutting layers and layers, and they put them under a microscope and see if you still got any cancer cells. And they keep going deeper and taking more until they see no cancer. So I go into the office, and I start the procedure, and They took about 45, 50% of this nose. It was like from here over was gone. Took everything around the flesh around the tear duct, cut big chunks of my eyelid. Um, it was brutal. It was, really bleeding bad and everything. And I'm sitting, and I sit there to go through this procedure. And they give you a shot right behind the eyeball or the corner of the eye or the tear duct or in the nose, and they would cut, and then they would take this thing and they would cook it. Basically, they fire, burn it off, so it would stop bleeding. So you went through that process for about 30, 40 minutes, and then you go out and sit in the waiting room with a bandage over your face, and you wait till they got the lab results back, and then you go back in again, and you go back out again, and you go back in again. So it's like going to a dentist office and thinking about doing something to your teeth, and then doing one tooth, and then send you out, let the anesthesia wear off, and then come back in and start the whole thing again, and then go back out, and then come back in. So there was no end in sight. It was hours. While I was in there, this beautiful young lady come in. She was about 22, 24, something like that, and she had her friends with her, and they were holding her hands, and she looked scared, and she had a little tiny, it looked like a pimple on her cheek there, obviously a skin cancer. And I just tried to cheer her up, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and my bandage on my face, and I said, "Hey, don't worry about it. It's a piece of cake. I'm having it done. It's not a big deal." And she goes, "I know it's no big. Don't talk to me like I'm some kind of weak woman. I can handle this. You macho men, you're all the same. You think us women can't handle this kind of stuff? I'm going to handle this. This is a piece of cake." I said, "Okay. You just stay out of my business." "Okay, chauvinist." And I go, "Whoa." So I just sat there, and all the people in the lobby kind of looked at her, and I kind of looked at her, and I said, "Okay." So they called her name, and she goes in, and all of a sudden, these two girls took her in, and a couple nurses, and I hear this screaming like it was a torture chamber. I mean, she was screaming for 15 minutes in there. And remember, she only had that little tiny spot. And she finally comes out, and they're dragging her out. I mean, she's literally not walking. It's literally she can walk. She's not being held up. She sits in the chair. She's got this little tiny round bandage on there. She gets her breath back, and then she leaves. I had a hard time not smiling. And I have to admit that I'm not a saint, because honestly, I almost enjoyed her pain. Sorry. It was like, oh, there it is. Because that's exactly the feeling I had. She wasn't going to handle it well at all, and I was trying to help her. And then she beat me up, called me a chauvinist. And anyway, so I'm not a saint. I actually, a part of me took some pleasure in that. So I admit to the guilt of that. So forgive me, but I meant well. Anyway, so they finally go in there for my last little cutting, and this thing is just a bloody, big, huge hole. And I want to see it, and the doctor won't let me see it in the mirror. But he takes a photo that he's going to send to the plastic surgery and lets me see the photo. And it was a huge hole. And I got to be honest, my vanity was just like, whew, this is really heavy stuff, right? I said, okay, I can handle it. And my eye is hurting. And then he's taken this thing and he's burned, all the openings so it stopped bleeding and everything. But I got this huge hole. Half the nose is gone. And so he gives me these pain pills, and he says, "You're going to need these when the anesthesia wears off. You're going to need these pain pills really bad. It's going to feel terrible." And I said, "Okay." So I don't think I need them. I never need pain pills. I mean, I go to the dentist, get my tooth drilled. I don't take shots. So I wasn't expecting anything. I mean, he'd been fooling around my eyeball and nose and face, but I thought I could handle it. So I get home and I put the pain pills on the counter. My wife goes, "Oh, you got pain pills? You never use pain pills." I said, "Nah, I probably won't need them. That's only for wimps." Well, about 45 minutes later, the anesthesia is worn off. And I am feeling like my face is being held on a barbecue grill. I mean, it was burning. It was painful beyond measure. And I'm grinding it out and everything. I said, well, maybe I'll take one pill. So I took a pill in my hand, I got a glass of water, and I put it in my mouth, and I say a prayer to God. Swallow the water, and by the time the pill starts to go down my throat, boom, pain is gone. No pain. Before the pill even gets into my stomach, the pain is gone. And so I'm exhausted from the ordeal of having my nose, pretty much amputated that day. So I go upstairs and take a nap, and my wife is downstairs. Apparently, it's about a long nap. It was several hours long, and I wake up because my pillow's wet. My sheets are all wet. Everything it's wet. I got a dark room. I don't know what's going on, but everything's wet. And I'm going, holy cow! I must have been crying. This is terrible, because I don't want to be a wimp. I got this reputation of being the general, quote unquote, the general. I can handle pain and all this stuff. And there I am. Apparently, must have been crying. I come downstairs. I tell my wife, I guess I must have been crying. Everything's wet up there. And she goes, what? So she goes upstairs and comes back in about 3-4 minutes, and she's got all these sheets and pillowcases, solid, soaked with blood. I was bleeding. And she says, you weren't crying, you were bleeding. And I look at it, started to laugh, and I said, thank God, it was only blood. I thought I was crying. Of course, at that point, my wife thinks I'm nuts. Well, she probably knows I'm nuts. Anyway, so that night, I go to bed. I'm sleeping in a separate room. I'm in so much pain. And I'm lying there, and pain is gone at this point. And 4 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden, the room lights up. It's like the sun is in my room. It's the size of a wall. It's like 9-foot wall, 9 foot tall, and it's all like a big sunburst. And I got this whole side of my face is bandaged up. This eye is covered. I just got this eye open. And I open the eye, and I am perfectly calm. There's no wonder, like, wow, what's this? This is cool. What's going on? There was absolutely no questions. I just looked at this blaze of light. And it was like, yeah, I was expecting this. Yeah, this is normal. This is wonderful. And then there's this bare arm comes out of this sphere of light. A bare arm with a hand. Physical, not dreamlike. It was physical. And the hand just covered my eye and my face. And my whole body was filled with light, energy, love, bliss, vibrations. It felt like I was being loved by 1 billion mothers. I mean, it was beyond any level of love that I've ever felt in my entire life. There's just no way that you could describe the love that was felt. Total beyond bliss. If there's a word that's stronger than bliss, that's what it was. And I was just totally laying there, perfectly calm and peaceful and absorbing it all. And then I went back to sleep, apparently. And I'm not sure how long it lasted or anything, but I felt so loved. It was wonderful. Calmed me down. I was relaxed. I get up early the next morning, get in the car. We're going to see the plastic surgeon and get plastic surgery done on the face. And my wife is there with them, and the plastic surgeon explains that he was up in his office late with the photo they sent him, and he had all these graphs and stuff. And he had this plan that he'd been doing this particular surgery like this for like 33 years or something. And he was going to cut a big triangle on my forehead, bring it down, fold it over my nose. He was going to take chunks of my ear and use those to build cartilage. And then he was going to grow that over, and then we'd have 3 or 4 more plastic surgeries after that. Once that was done, then he'd remove the bump, and then he'd fix the forehead and fix the ears, and this is the way it was going to be. And I go, holy cow, okay. So at this point in time, I'm feeling very blissed out, and I figure, you know what? I give it to God. Whatever happens, happens. It's okay. It doesn't matter. So I go into surgery. My wife's expecting me to come out looking like Frankenstein. Frankly, I am too. They wheel me out, and I'm waking up, And my wife's standing there looking at me with disbelief in her eyes. I thought, oh, it must be worse than I thought, right? And she goes, no, they didn't do anything in your forehead or your ears. I go, really? So she demanded to see the doctor, and the doctor came out. The doctor had poor bedside manner, but he was really a great surgeon. I really appreciate him. He come out and he answered my wife's question. She says, well, what happened? You didn't do the forehead and everything. And he said, well, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I always do it that way. I always follow my plan. I've never varied from what I've grafted out. He says, but when I got in there, for some reason I was inspired to do something new and different I hadn't done before. He says, I took a section of your shoulder blade, and I was wondering about that because all of a sudden I felt their stitches there. I took a section of your shoulder, and he says, I rebuilt your nose from your shoulder and flesh from that and fixed your eyelid and everything. And he says, I've never done that before. He says, I just thought I'd try it. Let's see if it works. I go, okay. So he gave me a bottle of pain medicine, and I told him I don't need it. He says, no, you're going to need this. He says, because there's like about dozens and dozens of stitches in there, they're all over the place. He says, you're going to need this. And I said, okay. So I took it. So now I have 2 big bottles of pain medicine sitting on my kitchen counter, and I get home. My wife says, you going to take it? And I said, no, I'm not going to take it. Local anesthesia wears off. 0 pain. No pain at all. None. So I go to bed that night, sleeping in a separate room. Bandage all over this side of the face. One eye. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, once again, I'm awoken. And my whole wall behind me is this blazing sun. It's like a sphere. It's like an orb. It's just a huge blazing sun. It was so bright that it would have blinded a human eye. And I'm looking at it, and I see once again this arm reaching out from the blazing orb and puts its hand over my surgery, over my nose, my eye. And once again, I feel the greatest love in the world, or beyond the world, and just greatest love ever, just bliss. And so I don't ask any questions. There's no fear. There's nothing. It's just like, yeah, I expected this. Yes, it was anticipated. It was like something that I'd done before, and not just the night before. It felt normal, felt natural. I felt loved. So the next couple weeks go by. It looked ugly. I mean, it looked really ugly. I took the bandages off. My wife, she wants to see it. So I went in 10 days after the surgery to get the stitches out with the plastic surgeon, and he takes a look at this, and he's just like, what? Apparently, in 10 days, new skin had grown over the stitches. I don't know what the normal, reasonable time to grow skin over stitches, but he was amazed himself. He says he never saw anything heal that quick in his entire life of surgery, but he had to sit there and really had to work at getting the stitches out. And so I got the stitches out, and I went home, but it was still looking ugly. And my guru called. He was in San Francisco, and I'm up by Sacramento, and it was about 3 hours away with the traffic. And he says he wanted to come visit me that afternoon. I asked him if it was okay to come with his wife. I said, yeah, great. So I was looking at myself in the mirror that morning before he called, and it looked really hideous. But I noticed later on that day before he arrived, it was looking 50% better than it had in the morning. It was still ugly, but it was 50% better. So he came and he visited me, and we had a nice meal together and had some friends come over. And I decided that I was going to go to this wedding that I'd been invited to in Napa Valley, that the guru was going to go to, and a bunch of people I knew were going to be there, and the bride wanted me to be there. But I had canceled it because I didn't want to show up really, hideous looking like Frankenstein. I didn't want to distract from the wedding. But the guru said, well, you might want to go. So I sent a note to the bride, and I says, I'll be at the wedding. So I show up at the wedding, and by then it was like another week and a half or 2 weeks later. And the only thing I got is I got an eye patch on, covering my eye. And the nose pretty much kind of looked just like it does now. And it's practically healed. So I sat down at this table at the reception after the wedding, and there was about 9 of us there from this organization. And the guru was sitting there. And all of a sudden, the guru turns and he looks at me, and everybody's wondering what's going on, and he goes, "Bill, by the way, you have not been having visions. You've been not having dreams. It's not your imagination." He says, "What's been happening to you for a couple of nights, during your surgery?" He says, "Those were true life experiences. What you saw was real, physical." And I go, "Really?" Okay, that, it's just off the top of his head. And he says, "That was a visit from the big boss." Now, he calls the big boss is Babaji. He says, "And that was Babaji. Came to heal you." So all these people heard that, and they didn't even hear the story, so they didn't know what was going on. But he basically told them what happened, and he wasn't there, which I was impressed with. I'm going, I thought I had this private experience. So that's what happened. I had this pain taken away. I had this terrible surgery, but I came out of it looking pretty much almost normal. And it healed. And then I had this wonderful experience with the light, with Babaji and the healing. And then to make it even better, I had my guru verify my experience in front of others, 9 other people, to let them know that what really happened was true. How he knew, I don't know. But that's the story of an encounter with Babaji over a couple of nights and a healing. And to this day, anytime I think about the story and think about the experience, like right now, it's like a helicopter inside my spine. It's like it's twirling, it's tingly, it's blissful just to even remember it. Pure love, pure divine love.